Good morning, and welcome to Makers Church. Can you clap yourselves up for coming to church on the hottest day of the year? This is very impressive. Before I jump into the sermon, I feel like there's just a lot of thank yous we need to give this morning. Can we thank the band for leading us in this heat? Particularly Michael back here in the sweat box. Our tech team up there in the hottest part of the building. And can we thank our facilities team and Patrick for trying to cool this place down? We did try. A for effort. I know a couple things about you just by you being here this morning. You either really, really love Jesus and you're like, I'm coming to church, or you don't have AC at home and you're like, I'm going to sweat wherever I'm at, so I'm just going to go to church, right? I know we don't have air conditioning at our house, and we're just hot wherever we are. So we're glad that you're here. I believe a church that sweats together stays together. We'll be connected at a level we've never been connected before after today. So thanks for being here. If we've never met, my name's Derrick, and I serve here as our lead pastor. And if you are new with us, we're so glad that you're here. Welcome. It does get better than this in terms of the heat, as you know. I just want to put a little pin in this. We are working on a major church renovation project, which includes air conditioning. So don't forget this day when that comes up, and there'll be a lot to celebrate. I know it's easy to forget. We have short memories. It's like, we don't need air conditioning. It's San Diego. And then remember today. Labor Day weekend 2022. Hey, last week we started a new series called Back to School. And today we're going to continue that series. And really this whole series is built around lessons that we have learned growing up in just by being students, just by being in school. Lessons to be learned. And so every week we kind of have a catchphrase that comes out of just being a school kid. And what we're really trying to do is understand if it's true that Jesus was a teacher, he was a rabbi, and he's asked us to be his disciples, his followers. We're to be his students. How do we learn these lessons and take them to heart? And we're looking throughout the entirety of the scriptures to find these lessons to be learned and kind of coupling them with some school ground lingo to help these things make sense to us. And so we're going to continue that today. And today's lesson to be learned is that we should never skip recess. Can we say that together? On three. 1, 2, 3. Never skip recess. Awesome. Yeah, that's the lesson that we're going to do today. And there's a just this reality, right? That for most kids, I know for mine at least, when I ask all three of my kids, what's your favorite subject in school? Every single one of them says it's either recess or PE. And I'm like, that's not really a subject. PE kind of is, but okay. And I know that this may be not true for you growing up. Maybe you didn't love recess or PE. It's not true for everyone, but I think that our kids maybe know something that we've forgotten. That we should never skip recess. Why is it that all through our school-age lives, which feels like your entire life until you're out of school, and then it goes by really quick, and all of a sudden you're having your 20-year high school reunion, you're like, where did time go? But why did we quit these rhythms? Particularly, I really love the kindergarten rhythm, is you nap and then you play, right? Why did we stop that, And I think that baked into this kind of never skip recess thing is this idea that we are made to play. And you have these on your Frisbees or fans, depending on how you want to see these this morning. And I just want to know, is anyone in here able to catch a Frisbee through our stand up? Everyone else around them, stand up, stand up, stand up. If you can catch a Frisbee. Way in the back. Okay, if you're near him, cover your face. Cover your face. Oh, Billy Jack, interception. All right. One more. Who else can catch one? Who else can catch a Frisbee? Come on, I know we've got some athletes in here. Stand up. Okay, Chris, cover your face if you're near him. Oh, that's a pretty good throw. Okay, one more. All right, somebody else. Yes. Whew. Come on. Let's clap it up. Okay, we're doing so good. We got two more. Who else? Sonny, all the way in the back. Oh, Billy Jack. Oh, hey! Yay! All right, one more. Last one. Chris, what? Somebody else. Over here. Oh, cover your face. Yes. All right. So, please use him as fans as the rest of the morning goes on. But this is the lesson that we're trying to learn, that we should never skip recess, that we're made to play, and we don't want to just talk about it, we want to be about it. How many of you hosted or attended a 30 by 30 active in the month of August? Let's give it a shout. Okay, all right. So you all are already preaching this with your lives by saying, you know what? It's not just about work. I'm going to go out and have some fun. I'm going to play. And we don't want to just talk about this stuff. We want to be about it. And so we're trying to bake these kind of rhythms in to our lives to the point where we're like, you know what? Let's do it 30 days in a row. Thanks to Shalise. She planned all that. And so this is the lesson that we want to learn today. But I know some of you who have committed to memory, verbatim, the Maker's Church core values, you're like, hold up, wait a minute. I thought our core value as a church was that we were made to make, not made to play. I've never seen that anywhere. I've never heard that anywhere. If this was so important, why wasn't it baked into the core values? I know some of you, no one thought that, but it is true. We have a core value as a church. In fact, it's baked into our name as a church that we are made to make. We absolutely believe that our God is the creator of the universe, the maker of all things, that he created us, that he made us in his image and likeness. And if God is a maker, then we too are made to make. That we are the ones who are supposed to fill the earth and subdue it, the ones that are supposed to create, to make, to be creative and innovative, to solve problems, to fix broken things, to be the ones who co-labor with each other and with God to make on earth as it is in heaven. This is our core mission as a church. And we believe this to be true in our bones. But what we also know about our Creator God, about our Maker God, is that God doesn't only know how to make. God knows how to take a break, right? We see this in the very beginning of the creation account, in this poetry that tells us about the character and the nature of our God. It says he created, I think that was 6, created. And then on the 7th day, it says this in Genesis 2, by the 7th day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the 7th day, he rested from all his work. Now pause. It's Labor Day weekend, and as Americans, we know how to do this once a year. Unless you're in the service industry or a firefighter or a cop or somebody else that works in the hospital or all the other places that we've decided not to stop working on the one day a year that we're supposed to celebrate not working on one day a year. So this is like the very American version of Sabbath is once a year, we'll either give you the day off or we'll pay you extra for showing up. This is as good as we are as Americans about kind of embodying this thing. It says by the 7th day, God had finished the work he had been doing. And so on the 7th day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the 7th day and he made it holy because on it, he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. Have you ever paused to recognize that creating is exhausting? That making is exhausting, that doing is exhausting? For some reason in our culture, we just celebrate the do, go, achieve. And we don't even realize how much is being sucked out of our souls by not stopping and pausing and breaking and resting and ultimately playing. And the thing is when we apprentice under Jesus, those of us who have said yes to Jesus, we're going to follow Jesus with our lives, we not only take on his mission, which is to make on earth as it is in heaven, the great commandment, the great commission, right? It's not only to do that, but it's also to take on his rhythm. And we see in the life of Jesus that he took on the rhythm of the Father. That Jesus, he taught this, he modeled it, but he also did this very interesting thing. If you go look at the scriptures, almost every miracle that Jesus performs is on the Sabbath. And so he's playing with this idea a little bit. And we get confused. We're going to talk a little bit about more of that in a little bit. But I know that many of you are thinking, that's great. That's great. Sabbath, take a day off a week. What do we do at that time? What is the right day? When do I do it? And we've talked a lot about this in the recent past. Just about a year ago, I preached a sermon on Sabbath rest. Pastor Mark has one of my favorite sermons of all time on rhythm. And it's something that we try to bake into. We're getting better as a church, baking it into our rhythms as a church. It's something that we take really seriously now. I would say that we didn't always. And if this idea, this topic of Sabbath is really interesting to you, then I would recommend you go back and listen to Pastor Mark's message, to my message from last week. If you didn't know, you can find those on the internet, YouTube, all the places, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of that. And you could search for those messages. And they're a little deeper. They're a little bit more robust. And we're gonna scratch the surface of this morning because I want to move through this idea of Sabbath and rest so that we can get to play. All right? So just a couple quick thoughts on Sabbath rest. First, what we see is this very interesting idea is that God, he did this thing on the seventh day. He rested, so he did what he's inviting us to do. But then it says that he blessed it and he made it holy. He blessed it and he made it holy. And this idea is so interesting that God blesses these three things in the creation account. He blesses the animals and the things that he had created. He blessed the people that he created. So there were these things that he blessed. And then he blessed a day. Animals and humans and a day. So what is a blessing? What is common? What is the through line between those things that he blessed? To bless something is to make it full of life, to make it life-giving, life-producing, to bless it. He had given them this command to fill the earth and subdue it, and then he blessed them to go and do it. To bless something is to give it life, to give it energy, to animate it. And it's so interesting, we could see that, right, in animals. They procreate, some really quickly, like rabbits, some others rather slowly. Humans do the same. We can make things with our imaginations and our minds, and we can create. But then he blessed a day. And it's a very interesting concept at this time because no matter what we do with time, how could it be life-giving, life-producing? And what the scriptures are telling us is those things happen not when we do, but when we don't. Not when we go, but when we stop. And that there's this idea that it's blessed. And then he says it's holy. And what holy means is that it's a place that God resides. It's the presence of God. And this would have been blasphemy in this ancient times because God was always in a place. He was in a temple, or he was in the sky, or he was in the clouds. That God, the little gods, the little g gods, they were in space and in temples, not in time. You'd have to go on pilgrimage. You'd have to go on a journey. You'd have to go to a place to find this God or experience the presence of this deity. But here in the scriptures, we see that God is making time holy. We don't have to go on a pilgrimage. We just have to stop and rest to experience him. This idea that this Sabbath is about a rhythm, it's about a system that works where we can find the life-rejuvenating, life-giving space to be blessed and to experience God in this holy space. So what does any of this have to do with play? I mean, we've got Frisbees. I mean, it was just an excuse to give you air conditioning this morning. But what does this idea of Sabbath and play have to do with one another? Because I don't know about you, but a lot of the ways that I love to play are exhausting. I love to be with my kids and play with them. Exhausting. I love to ride dirt bikes. Exhausting. I used to surf. I still love to surf. I don't get to do it any much. Now it's really exhausting. I surfed a couple weeks ago and I turned my little watch on and the wheel was like It just was like my little rings were, I broke some records because that's how out of shape I am. Exhausting. We love, as a family, we love to go camping. I don't know why, because it is exhausting. So much logistics, right? But somehow, even though those things, the ways that I love to play, are physically exhausting, they're restorative to my soul. They renew me. They restore me in a way that not a whole lot of other things do. But, if I don't have margin in my life, I will either not make the time to go and do those things, or I'll be miserable when I'm doing them. You ever been in an awesome place? Like the theme song in the background is a Lego movie. Everything is awesome. And it's just like, I can't believe I'm here. This is amazing. I'm in this place with these people doing this thing. And you're miserable. You ever been there? You like should be on cloud 9. But even though you're in the place that you always wished you were, with the people you wish you were, doing the things you wish you were doing, you were just exhausted and depleted. And I think this is what happens when we skip over this idea of rest and we go straight from work to play. These things are interdependent. You ever heard that saying, work hard to play hard? I love it. I feel like we live by it. Like we work really hard, we play really hard, we have a blast. But I think that we need to reframe that statement. I think it should be work hard, rest hard, and then play hard. Okay, work hard, rest hard, play hard. See, most of us do a lot of working. I don't necessarily mean at work, because I know some of you, I work with some of you, you don't work that hard at work. But we work hard at all of these things, trying to achieve, trying to arrive. We work hard at our image. We work hard at our what we're putting out there on social media. We work hard at all sorts of things that are a lot of times really, really good. Working hard at your job, working hard in your relationships. We do a lot of working. And we can get so caught up in it that we never stop and rest, and we never get to the place where we're playful. Where we have the ability and the energy and the intention to go and play. And I believe this. I didn't read it in the verse in the scriptures, but I've lived it. Play, real play, it flows from rest. It flows from rest. And I don't think this is news to any of us, but when we're depleted, we're just not going to have a great time. It's just not going to happen. And this idea of rest, it's so essential. It's so important that not only does God talk about it in the creation account, and the writers want us to understand the nature of God by this beautiful poetry, but we see it again later on in the Old Testament as a command. Like, it is in the 10. Not only is it in the 10 that Moses gets on Mount Sinai, it's the longest one. It's got the most airtime. It would not fit on Twitter. Too many characters. This is what it says in Exodus 31. It says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, you must observe my Sabbaths. This will be a sign." Back up. You must. Not like you should, you could, you must. Observe my Sabbaths. This will be a sign between me and you for the generations to come, so that you may know that I am the Lord who makes you holy. Observe the Sabbath because it is holy to you. Anyone who desecrates it is to be put to death. Those who do any work on that day must be cut off from their people. I know you're scared. You're like, oh my gosh, I feel seen. For 6 days, work is to be done, but for the 7th day is a day of Sabbath rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day is to be put to death. The Israelites are to observe the Sabbath, celebrating it for generations to come as a lasting covenant. It will be a sign between me and you and the Israelites forever. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Anybody here today need to be refreshed? I know you're all thinking about a cold drink right now. But what if there's a deeper type of refreshing, a deeper type of satisfaction that we can get? Now, John Mark Comer, who wrote the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, amazing book. If you really want to take this to heart, I highly recommend reading it, wrestling with it. He wrote a different book that I actually just read before that book, but I think he actually does some better work in that book on Sabbath. I'm going to just read you a couple excerpts because this was really, really helpful for me. Just pause for the cause for a moment. If you remember last year when I talked about Sabbath, I talked about this journey that I've personally been on, and really our church has been on. From contemplation, like, I'll think about that, to really deep conviction, like, we should probably do something about that, to confession. And if you were here last year, I just gave a public profession. Derrick Miller is not great at being obedient to what Jesus asks of me when it comes to rest and Sabbath. And then move towards some commitments. And I made some commitments then, just some small things that I could do regularly over the last year. And as I reflected back on those things, I've done some of them. Nothing like overpowering or supernatural, just some little things that would help me be better at resting. And we've done some things as a church. We take staff Sabbaths on Fridays. This conversation has evolved into a place where Mark and Shalise and I realized we've been hard charging leading this church for 13 years, and we've never had a break. And so then this idea of sabbatical came up, and we're like, nah. Actually, this was funny. I didn't even tell you guys this. I was on a trip with some friends in 2019. We were doing some check-ins on what's going on, what are you feeling God's calling you to, yada, 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 yada. And I said in 2019, I think I need a sabbatical. He sent me a screenshot, a picture of his journal where he wrote down, I didn't even write it down, he wrote it down, and sent it to me literally 2 days ago. And so we've been hard at work over the last several months to figure out, can we do this? How can we go about this deep saturation kind of rest? And so we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We can clap that up. We're going to do a sabbatical, the three of us, kind of alternating over the next year and some change, and you'll hear more about that to come. But this is us trying to really talk and be about this stuff. And so we see here in this Exodus charge to us, this Exodus command to us, a bunch of scary things, right? Especially the one like, you will be put to death. And I know what you think, and you're like, not true, because I've never Sabbath and I'm still here. Because that's the way I think about the scriptures. I'm like, gotcha. And I don't know exactly what that means, but here's some best sense that I can make of it is God isn't saying that if we don't rest, he's going to kill us. I think he's saying if we don't rest, we're going to kill ourselves. And John Mark in his book, Garden City, he says this. Why is this so hard for us? For 6 days we rule and subdue and work and draw out and labor and bleed and wrestle and fight with the ground. But then we take a step back. And for 24 hours we Sabbath. We enjoy the fruit of our labor. We delight in God and in his world. And we celebrate life. We rest and we worship. And then my addition is, and at the end of all of that, let's go play. Let's go have some fun because now we're restored and we're refreshed. And before we jump back into work, let's go play. Think kindergarten. Think nap, snack, recess. This is a rhythm that we should find a way to incorporate into our lives. God is inviting us into this rhythm with him, this interplay of work and rest and play. But so many times we don't lack the energy. Or we lack the energy to get out and play. He goes on to say this. He says, lots of people argue that if we're free from the Sabbath because it was part of the Torah or law, I know where you guys are at, and John Mark just pokes at you. He says, as if it was legalistic rule we were stuck with until Jesus comes. What a tragic misunderstanding. It is true that we are no longer under the Torah, and it's also true that Sabbath is the only one of the 10 commandments not repeated in the New Testament. You biblical scholars out there, I know what you're doing. But even so, the Sabbath still stands as wisdom. There isn't a command in the New Testament to eat food or drink water or sleep 8 hours a night. That's just wisdom. It's how the Creator set up the human body and the world itself. You can skip the Sabbath. It's not sin. It's just stupid. Those are John Mark's words. At one point, Moses calls the Sabbath a gift. That's exactly what it is. And then the last few words from John Mark. He says, I cringe when I hear people argue about whether or not we have to keep the Sabbath. And if so, on what day? And some on Saturday, like the Jews, and others on Sunday because of Jesus' resurrection. Others think any day is fine. But all this arguing is an exercise in missing the point. The point is that there is a way the Creator set the creation up to thrive. A way that God sets you up to thrive. And when we Sabbath, we tap into God's rhythm for our human flourishing. But these rules aren't suffocating or rigid. They're pliable and limber and spacious. They are the rules of a craft, a discipline, an art form. Does anyone feel more invited into trying this rhythm in your life when you begin to see it this way? I know I do. Because for me, for so long, I was like, that seems impossible. I won't try. But now I feel like it's essential, and I'm gonna. In Mark chapter 2, verse 27, Jesus uses these words. He says to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is the Lord even over the Sabbath. He's saying, look, this isn't some rigid rules for you to follow. This is a gift for you. This is something that is an invitation for you to step into. And I believe that if we're going to get to the point where we never skip recess, which, by the way, we're going to talk in a moment about a few just like real tangible things. If we're going to be the kind of people who don't skip recess, then we can't skip rest. If we want to be embodying this idea that we're made to play, we have to be operating from a place not of depletion, but of satisfaction and fulfillment. And I think this is important. Not all of us will rest the same way, right? What's really life-giving to me might be really life-sucking to you. And not all of us will play the same way. We need to quit the comparison game, right? This is an art form, not a rule book. And I think, man, what if we just found one way to rest in a new way? And here's some helpful, this is like practical, okay? Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith wrote a book called Sacred Rest. And she talks about 7 types of rest. And now I know what you mean. Oh my goodness, I can't even think of doing one version of rest. Now you got to give me 7. But I think this is helpful. And as I talk through these, I want you to be thinking about the area in your life. Just pick one area in your life where you need to rest the most. These are 7 different kind of spaces or ways that we need to rest. Physical rest. Physical, real simple. Sleep. How many of you are not sleeping enough? This might help you, right? So there's an app for that, millions. What would it look like to say, I'm going to change my rhythm around sleep? Physical, right? We can keep praying for something supernatural. And all we really need is something physical, right? We say, God, would you help me navigate life and help me with all the woes of this? And he's like, you just need a nap. Not going to lie, we have no air conditioning in our house, but we do have one in our room. And when I got home from work this morning, I turned it on and I shut the door and I said, Laurel, don't turn it off because when I get home from church, I'm going to take a nap. I don't ever take naps, but I'm going to today because I feel like I have permission to. All right? Number 2, second space that we need rest in is mental, okay? Mental. We are overwhelmed with information, completely overwhelmed. And we got a lot of things going on. We got a lot of plates spinning. We got a lot of hands in different things. And I know some people that I love really, really clear, really, really a lot, like my wife, who can't turn her mind off at night often. The mind is just going. Anyone like that? Can't turn your mind off? Here's a hack. Write it down. Get a journal. Talk into your phone. Journal's better because we'll get to the next one. But there's a way to do a brain dump, a mind dump. And if you write everything down, you get it out, you could maybe go to bed at night. Doctor said it, not me, right? Spiritual. Need some spiritual rest. It doesn't mean stop going to church, right? Some spiritual rest. We need to be restored, rejuvenated. This is something like taking the Sabbath holy, making the Sabbath holy, implementing it, practicing it, doing it, praying, meditating, reflecting, being in the presence of God. A spiritual kind of rest and renewal. Emotional. Anybody emotionally exhausted? Anybody have a job that's just so emotionally trying? There's some tricks and tools of the trade when it comes to your emotional rest and well-being. Some of it is talking to a close friend or a loved one. It could be a therapist or a counselor. It could be journaling and reflecting. That's the fourth one. The fifth one, social. All you extroverts are like, no, don't look at me. Even extroverts need a break. Even extroverts need a break. I'm an extrovert to the nth degree, and there's some times when I know I've reached my limit and I just keep charging. What would it look like to say no to FOMO? I have FOMO so bad, fear of missing out, so I say yes to everything, and it isn't good for me. If you're an introvert, read a book. Go hide. Take a break. Get away from people. You will be restored. Sixth one, sensory. Can I get an amen? We have so many competing messages in our life. Our phones are in our hands or our pockets all the time, beeping and buzzing. I have it on my watch. We have ads and TVs and radios, and who really listens to the radio anymore? Spotify ads if you're too cheap to pay for it. You know, all of the things that are just constantly bombarding us. What would it look like to power down? Like, for real. The other day, my phone wasn't working. Honestly, I think it might have been Bree. So we were camping. Maybe it wasn't you, maybe it was. We were camping, and I was like, my phone won't work. It's freaking out. And someone was like, hey, dude, when's the last time you turned that thing off? And I felt so called out. Like, don't forget, that thing's a computer. It needs a break, too. What if you started having compassion and empathy for your devices and gave them a break? Maybe we would get a sensory break. And then the last one is creative. We need creative rest. We need to be inspired. We need to be wowed and awed. We need to wonder, what does that for you? Is it art? Is it music? Is it poetry? Is it God's nature and all of his creation? Is it knowing that you're too out of shape to surf but still paddling out to bob in the lineup and enjoy the beauty of a sunset? These are the things that can restore our soul. Do I want you to leave here, write these things down, and go find a plan to work all 7 of them into your life? Probably not, because you'll be working too hard at resting. But could you pick one? Could you pick one and say, man, maybe this is something God is inviting me into? And it doesn't happen instantaneously. It doesn't happen overnight, but it can happen incrementally. Look, I know I'm all touchy-feely right now because I'm about to turn 40, and I'm thinking about not my next year, but my next decade. And my biggest theme that I want to do in my 40s is I want a different pace. And I know that it's going to take me 10 years, not a year. But I want to practice some new rhythms in my life. I want to integrate some things in my life that I think will help me work better, rest better, and play better. And so I don't know what that thing is for you. But what I do know is that we could go work really hard at all these 7 things and we could rest physically. We can rest in all these areas of our life and we could still miss the deep, profound kind of rest that Jesus says he gives. Now I'm going to end with this. In Matthew 11, verse 28. This is the Message translation. Jesus says, "Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me." I love that idea. If you're burned out even on religion, don't run from Jesus. Come to him. Because religion could really wear you out. It could exhaust you. But Jesus says, but not me. Come to me. Get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Would you pray with me? God, I think that's what we're all longing for, to live freely and lightly. God, we feel so weighed down by all sorts of things. And God, there's all kinds of tips and tricks and apps and things that will be helpful, but they'll only get us so far. And so, Jesus, I pray for 2 things this morning. I pray that you help us identify one tangible, practical thing that we could do in our lives that moves us closer to true rest and play. But God, I pray that at a soul level, God, that we would come to you. Look, for many in here, it's coming back to you again and again and again. God, we feel like, oh, I went to him once, I'm good. No, we need to come back to you over and over and over so that we can live freely and lightly. But God, I believe that there's some folks in here that have maybe never come to you for the first time, have never learned what it means to walk with you and follow you. And Jesus, my prayer is that if they're feeling compelled by that today would be a day they choose real rest in you. So for those of us who are burdened and heavy and weighed down, God, we pray, Lord, that you would make us light and full of life. We pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. Amen.